we can use one of the data type to represent a number without having decimal. If you have a number which doesn't have any decimal, then you can use either byte, short, int, long. 4 data types are available to represent the numbers. Now, suppose if you have a decimal number. To represent a decimal number, we have 2 data types. One is float, second one is double. Float and double. These 2 data types we can use to represent decimal numbers. Decimal number. If you have a decimal number, we choose either float or double. But again, you will have a question. Which one we have to choose? Again, byte, short, int, long. There are 4 data types are there to representing the number. Which one we have to choose? That depends on size of the data. I will also discuss that. So, to representing the numbers, without a decimal, we have 4 data types, byte, short, int, long. And to representing the decimal number, we have 2 data types, either float or double. And to represent the single character, we have one data type called char. So this particular data type will represent single character that we should keep in the single quotations. Single character is always put inside the single quotations, represent. Single code we have to use. Character data type. Now there is another data type called Boolean. Boolean. And this particular data type you can use to store either true or false. Boolean value. It is accepted that variable can hold only either true or false, only one value. We cannot store any other type of data in a Boolean variable. So these are the different primitive data types. Byte, short, int, long is for number without a decimal. Float and double is for decimal number. Char is for representing a single character that we should keep inside the double quotations. And Boolean is another data type which we can use is for true or false. We can keep either true or false in the Boolean variable. These are all primitive data types which we are commonly used in our programming. Now, non-primitive derived or collections. Here we have string, which is very popularly used. Array list, hash map, hash set. There are many more out there. So there are so many collections out there, so many derived data types, etc., etc. So these are all comes under non-primitive derived collections. And if you look at this, these are started with uppercase characters. Every type is started with uppercase character, whereas primitive types are started with all lowercase characters. You need to just recognize easily. Okay, so string comes under non-primitive type. It is not a primitive type. But what is the difference? What is the difference between primitive? What is the difference between primitive and non-primitive? And when we have to use primitive, where we have to use non-primitive? Primitive data types we can use to store single data at a time. Okay, for example, just to try to understand this. I have different students. I have, let's say, so many students are studying in a class. Now, to representing the student ID, I can create one variable like this, right? In the student ID equal to, let's say, 101. So here what I have done, I created only one single variable which can hold only one single value at a time. So whenever you create a variable that can hold only single value at a time. So after you change, for example, STUID you become 102, then what happens? 101 is replaced with a 102. Still it is having only one value at a time. That means all primitive data types, we can store only one value at a time in a variable. Okay, that variable can hold only one value at a time. All primitive types. But sometimes we will have some requirement like we have to store multiple values into single variable. Multiple data into single variable. That means single variable can hold different size of data, different type of data. For example, let us say I have 100 students are studying in my class. And to store every student ID, how many variables you have to create? Suppose let's say 100 students are studying in a class. For each student is having ID, student ID. So I want to store 100 student IDs. So how many variables we have to create normally? 100 variables are required. Right? To store 100 IDs, we have to create 100 variables. When you create 100 variables in a program, it is very, very difficult to manage. Right? You cannot refer the variables. Very difficult. So instead of creating 100 variables, if I store 100 IDs into one single variable, it is very easy to manage. In that case, we use non-primitive. For example, array list. If you look at array list, if we create a variable with array list, we can store multiple values in one single variable. Even same array also comes under non-primitive. If I create an array variable, so for example, let's say int a, is equal to new int of 100. If I define like this is called array. In the coming sessions, I will explain in detail. Just for now, I understand. So it is not a normal variable now. A is a array variable. Array means what? It can hold multiple values. How many values it can hold depends upon the size we specify here. This is called size. When I say 100, in A, I can store 100 values. I can store 100 values in A. In the coming sessions, I will elaborate more about non-primitive data types. We will discuss each and every non-primitive data type in detail. Okay, there are multiple sessions we'll take. So let us focus on primitive data types. Okay. So byte, short, int, long comes under. We can use them to represent the numbers without having decimal. Float and double is for decimal number. Char is for single character. Boolean is for true and false. If you want to store a string, we can use non-primitive type. String is a non-primitive type. Okay. Now, so let us see one example. How can we use these primitive data types? And one more thing. If you look at this first one, to representing the number without having decimal, we have a 4 types. Byte, short, int, long. But again, which one we will choose? Suppose I want to store 100. Which one is suitable? Byte, short, int, or long? Or suppose if I have a very big number, let's say I have a 10 digits number, then which one is suitable? So you have to choose the right type based upon the data you have, based upon the size of data. Okay. But how we will know that which one we have to select? Byte, short, int, long. So Java is provided that information. So I will share some small table here, and accordingly we can easily find out. So which data type is having, what is the size, and how much size of data the particular data type is allowed. Okay. So let me just put one small table here so that you can understand that. Okay, now just look at this. This is the table, and this is given by Java, guys. We haven't designed anything here new. So first let us record the byte. So these 4, byte, short, int, long, these 4 are for numeric data types. You can use it for storing numbers without having decimals, right? So when you create a variable with byte, right? So we can store the value which is between inside this range. Minus 128 to 128. Even negative values also we can store in a variables. Not only positive values, we can also store negative number in a variable. For example, can create int a equal to 100 you can store, which is a positive number, and you can also store a equal to minus 100. You can also store negative number. Okay, positive as well as negative numbers also allowed. So if you create a variable as a byte, we can store numbers between this particular range. Between minus 128 to 127 is the range. And if the number is beyond this range, you cannot store. So let's say this is a graph 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, plus 128. Here, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3 here, minus 128. So between this range, whatever numbers are comes under, all these numbers we can store in a byte variable, which is very smaller size actually. Byte is a starting size. So when you create a variable with a byte, so let's say byte a, then I can store in a between this minus 128 to plus 128. Between this range, whatever numbers comes, you can store those numbers in a variable. Okay, if you remember this range, you will know exactly which data type we have to use. Byte. Suppose if you have a number more than this, little bigger, then you can go with the short data type. So short will allow the numbers between this range, minus 32, 7682, 32, 767. So between this range, whatever numbers comes, all these numbers we can store in the short data type. And again, if your number is exceeded this number, let's say you have 33,700, something like this. 33,700. This is exceeded this number. So now, is it possible to store in the short data type? No. Okay, because this number is higher than this last number, right? So it is exceeded the range. So we need to go to higher levels. Then we can go to integer data type. So when you create a variable as integer data type, we can store very big number. So between this minus 2147, 483, 6482, 2147, 483, 647. So this is the maximum number. So between this range, all the numbers we can store in integer variables. And if the number is even though very bigger, then long. So you can see this is the maximum range. So most of the times we don't go more than this number. This is a maximum number which is allowed in the numbers. So long. Long means if I create any variable with a long data type, I can store any number between this particular range. Okay? For example, I have created a variable with a long data. Let's say L some x. Okay. So now I have stored in x just only 100. Will it work or not? Will it work or not? I just created a variable long x and then I have stored 100 into x. Is it valid or not? Will it work or not? Yes, obviously it will work. Because what's the range of long here? Between this to this, the 100 fall, right? But what is the disadvantages in this? If you do like this, what will be the problem? Yes, unnecessarily memory will be wasted. Why? Because as soon as you say long data type, for x, their huge memory will be allocated because the range is very high, right? The huge memory is allocated for x. But you are storing very small number. So you are just using only this much of space. So rest of the space will be what? Wasted. Okay? So that is the reason. Based on the size of data, you can rightly choose particular data type. So that will not waste our time. Okay, suppose I have taken byte, some x. Now I'm trying to store some number like this. Is it possible or not? I've taken byte variable x and then I'm storing a bigger number. It is not between minus 128 to 127. More than higher, right? More than is exceeded 127. So this is not possible. We are trying to store higher value in the lowest space. Not possible. Okay. But they can store lowest value in higher space. Even though the memories got wasted, still you can store lowest value in higher space. Okay. So most of the time, which one is moderate here is integer. So whenever you are working with the integer data types, most of the times we try to prefer int. And if your numbers is more than integer, more than this range, then you obviously go for long data type. But very rare case, you use that one. Okay. So this is most moderate data type int to representing the numbers. So guys, now you understood. So why they have provided 4 data types for to representing the numbers. Based on the size of the data, we have to choose the right data type. And same thing for double also, like the decimals. So these 2 data types are available for storing decimal numbers, float and double. So float is nothing but what? It is allowed 4 bytes of size. Means what? Can store fractional numbers. Means fractional numbers in the sense decimal numbers sufficient for storing 7 decimal digits. Suppose if you have a number like this. So after decimal, max 7 digits are allowed. If you create a variable with the float to data type, in that number and that variable, you can store max 7 decimals. max 7 decimals are allowed. If you create a float variable, and before decimal you can have any number, but after decimal, max 7 decimal numbers are allowed. And if you have more number of values, then you can go with a double. 8 bytes, almost double. That means after decimal, up to 15 decimal numbers are allowed. After decimal, 15 numbers are allowed. Okay, that's the difference between float and double. So most of the times we will try to use double. This is the more data type. And then we have a boolean. So this is only one data type which can hold only one bit. You can store either true or false, nothing else. And char allowed 2 bytes. That means only one single character we can store. If we create any variable with a char type, in that variable we can store only one single character or one single letter. Okay. So these are all primitive data types. So now let us see one example, practical demo, how to use these data types, how to create a variables with the different data types, and how to access the data from those variables. Let me show you one example. So far everything is clear. Please confirm in the chat box, everyone. So what is variable, why we need to create a variables, what is a data type, why we need data types, how many types of data types are available in Java, and what is the difference between primitive and non-primitive data types. So these are all most important and very basic and fundamentals. Now let us move on to the next example, data types. So now I'm going to create a new class to demonstrate data types. Let's create a new class. And my class name is, you can give any name to the class, no problem, but don't give any spaces, numbers, and also simply say data types demo. Yeah, I'm taking main method also. Click on finish. Yeah, now it is created a new class which contains main method. This is a simple comment I can just take. Alright, now let us see a small demo on data types. First, let us start with the numeric data types. Numeric data. So here, I'm just keeping the comment so that you can easily understand the code later, okay? Numeric data types. So I will define two variables. You can see here, int a 100, b equal to 200. Can we define a variable like this? Is it valid syntax or not? Is it valid syntax or not? Yes, both are same data types. Right? If a and b are both of same data types, you can create number of variables in one single line. Right. So now I just want to print the value of a, system.out.println, and I just print the value of a. Okay. And also I'll writing simple meaningful message. I can say the value of a is, and then concatenation. And same thing, I'll try to print the value of b. So here I'm printing value of a. Now I want to perform sum of a and b. I want to add these two numbers. Simply what you can say, a plus b. Right? So let's try to execute. So now we got value of a is 100, the value of b is b, and then 200, the total is 100, 300. So now I want to write more meaningful message here for the third statement. So what I can do is, I can say the sum of a and b is, okay, now I'm keeping concatenation of it. Just observe this. I just written more meaningful message. Just like how I have done in the previous two statements, concatenation. Here I just printed the value of a. Here I'm printing value of b. And here I'm printing the value of a plus b, right? Concatenation. Now, if I just observe the output, see now how it is got printed. So this is not our expectation, right? So we have to get 300, but instead we just printed the value of a and b directly. So what exactly happening here is, first it is printed as it is in the console window, and then concatenated with the a, 100 is got printed, then immediately concatenated with the b. Because why it is got printed like this? For example, if you do like this, directly if you print a plus b without having this message, so I'm just removing this message, I can simply say a plus b, right? So in this particular case, you will get a 300. But when you use same a plus b, with this concatenation, you are not getting the right value. What is happening here is, before printing this a plus b, you are concatenating with a string actually. So when you're concatenating with this with a string, what will happen is, here it is confused. There are two class operators out there. So whether do you want to do addition or do you want to do concatenation? What exactly you want to do? So because when I use two class operators, one after another, this is basically confusing. So it is directly as it is printed a value and b value. But still, I want to get a plus b. The addition of two numbers I want to get. So simply you can put that expression in the bracket. Yet, so now what happens? First, this expression will be executed. A plus b will be executed, which is 300. Then it is concatenated with this. So now you will get the right. Okay, so now we can see the right. So this is how we can simply use numeric data type. So now let us see decimal number. So in the decimal, okay, so again in the integer we have a different types, like short we have, short. And before short, do we have any other numeric types? Let us say byte, short, int, long. So we have saying integer. Now let us see byte, short and longer. Byte, there's a byte. Byte, b equal to. So what is the range of byte data type? Minus 128 to 127. Right? So let's say 125 I'm storing. Byte b equal to, b is already used this variable, a and b already used. So we have to give some different variable here. Same variable name we cannot refer multiple times because b is already created with integer. So same variable name we cannot use. So we have to use some different name. Let's say by. by is a variable name. And now I want to just print this value. You can say b1. So this is byte. And similarly short, if you want to use short, sh equal to, in the short, what is the number I can store? What is the maximum and minimum range? This is the maximum range, 32767. 32767.